I generally, start with the end in mind. We want healthy, productive pigs. That's better for me. That's better for you as a consumer to have healthy, productive pigs. And vaccines play a role in that. The cost of a disease outbreak can be really devastating. You might not have seen parvovirus for 3 years or 5 years or ever on a farm, but if you stop vaccinating, there's a good chance you will. So really trying to share with those, friends, family, strangers on the airplane, whatever, that it's really about how do you make safe and productive pigs, which makes safe and and nutritious meals. And so really try and say these are safe, they're efficacious, they're beneficial for us, and they're beneficial for you.
Swine it.
Well, hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Swine It podcast. I'm your host, Trey Kellner, and today I am joined by Brenton Sexton, Associate Veterinarian with Suidae Health and Production. Dr. Brent, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well. We got off to a good start, and daughter's off to daycare, so we're doing all right.
Hey, that's awesome. My little son took his first bus ride to school today. So exciting times when you have young ones. So Brent, introduce yourself to our audience.
Yep. So my name is Brenton Sexton. I'm from Rockwell City originally in west central Iowa. Grew up on a family farm. We didn't have livestock, but I had a neighbor who was a veterinarian, and that's through the 4-H and FFA programs and probably annoying them throughout the summers and hanging around. That's how I got exposed to veterinary medicine. The swine side of things really took off once I got to Iowa State. Just kind of the longer I was there, the more opportunities there were. And so it was, by the time I got to vet school, wanted to do like 75% cattle, 25% hogs. And by the time I was a fourth year, it was about 90% hogs and 10% cattle. And then I got a job offer. First job out of college was with Pipestone, and I was swine exclusive. So kind of figured like, oh, okay, I'll see enough cattle on my way to the pig barns. So it's been all hogs all the time since then. Like I said, first job was with Pipestone, spent there about a year, and then joined the mass shop teams. Covered the eastern side of the Iowa, western Illinois with the Central Prairie group. So Kayla Hennis and I were the two veterinarians there, and worked for right about 4 years there. Had a really good time. Got to kind of see and do a lot through disease prevention and outbreak management, vaccine implementation, and just really got to go deep in on a lot of different aspects of pig production. It was a great experience, and then had the opportunity here recently to join Suidae as an associate veterinarian, working with some of the managed farms and independent producers. And it's only been about just a few months, but so far so good, and really enjoying the team and everything. So been a little bit of a journeyman so far, but it's been a good trip, and I've gotten to see and do a lot.
Want to save up to 25% in labor time when cleaning your barns? With MS Top Foam Power, you effectively remove all historical pollution. MS Top Foam Power ensures the surface is perfectly clean and ready for disinfection. Find your dealer at www.msgold.eu.
Yeah, awesome. So let's start there, Brent, right? So you've worked as a veterinarian in 3 different production systems. Based off of that experience and kind of that diversity and seeing, strengths and weaknesses of different systems, what do you think the biggest hurdle that our industry needs to overcome is from your perspective and what you've learned so far?
I think the biggest hurdle that we have to overcome is we have so many really amazing veterinarians out there that are doing really interesting things and getting different results, and it's just really hard to quantify or to compare successes or failures, which can be equally helpful, that some people have and others. I think we often, a paper gets published and oh wow, this must be exactly how it'll work with our production system, and it doesn't. Or someone gives us, a recommendation, or another paper comes out or whatever, and we're like, oh, that will never fit in our production system. Well, maybe not. It's just the challenge of how we're all kind of doing the same thing. We're all trying to manage PRRS. We're all trying to eliminate PED or manage PED, all trying to raise healthy, productive hogs in different systems, different environments. And it's just, you feel like the answer's out there. It's got to be out there somewhere. Someone's doing something right. And just how do you get enough aggregate data? How do you get enough people working together to, make large scale improvements off of so many, almost microscopic data points?
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing that I wanted to highlight about your experience, Brent, is oftentimes on podcasts or presentations, we talk about disease prevention, right? And that's extremely important. I don't want to downplay that by any means, but some things that aren't highlighted as much is disease management. So once we have the issue, then how do we deal with it? In your experience, maybe talk about some successes and failures that you've had to share with our audience on PED and then PRRS.
Yeah, absolutely. So being a vet in kind of east central Iowa, disease management is a big part of it, right? Prevention's great. But unfortunately, disease happens. I think I saw my first PRRS pigs like my second day of work. And that was largely because the first day of work, I was doing all my onboarding. Whereas a good friend of mine in northern Minnesota, North Dakota, didn't see PRRS for a year and a half. So we had a little bit different kind of introduction to swine medicine. So, I think the biggest part in disease management, or maybe not the biggest, but a really crucial part is trying to identify the root cause. It can be really easy to get in there like, okay, we just stop the bleeding, and that's really critical too. But that early period, maybe it doesn't have to be right away, but that's a really important part of identifying, okay, where do we think this came from? How did this get introduced? So I would say don't blow that off for 2, 3, 4 months down the road when half your, you've had employees leave, or you've forgotten what day so-and-so did whatever. But, so I'll throw that as a caveat. I was like, don't forget that step. But in terms of managing, really the stop the bleeding is about the best analogy for it. What can you do as soon as, like right now, to get better? And sometimes there's not a lot. Sometimes it's planning for a few weeks down the road. But how do we either prevent other farms from getting it if you're in close proximity? How do we get this farm feeling better sooner? So PRRS specifically, working with the mash offs, we had several farms in a small area. So every outbreak was very important. They weren't filtered farms. There's lots of, Kayla Hennis deserves a ton of credit for the work she does with biosecurity in the Pittsfield kind of area of Illinois with those farms. And the level of interconnectedness, even though there's lots and lots of steps to prevent that, when you drive past 2 sow farms to get to your sow farm to work, I can remember driving to a PD outbreak and I see the employee from another farm passing me. I mean, it would be great if we all had assigned routes, but how can you manage that when you're 10 people coming from 10 different places to 10 different farms and stuff? So I think I really learned through those experiences of how critical, immediate intervention is. So, that I would say, as we talk specifically to PRRS, working in how do we manage outbreaks? A few things that we found to be pretty helpful. And again, this is one of those points where we don't have a ton of data. I don't have a p-value to share, but Pulmotil and Draxxin, some of the macrolide shots have been really helpful in early onset. reducing those very early mortality losses. We had a nasty string of 1, 2, 4 outbreaks that really killed a lot of pigs, and decided, boy, we've got to try and figure out how to make that piglet healthier, more robust, and moved vaccines into the sow farm. We had generally vaccinated and weaned the market. Let's move them into the sow farm. Let's give those piglets exposure to the vaccine earlier. And we also started doing more of the pulmonal. So again, we have two variables. I'm not saying what does what, but when we had, multiple groups with 80, 90% mortality or 60 to 90% mortality, I mean, they're just devastating. You pretty quickly decide you don't want to go through that again. And by those and other management steps and whatnot, we really limited that. Outbreaks were bad, but it seemed that having a vaccinated pig early prevented those really nasty 80, 90% groups. We're looking at 20 to 30, 35% groups. And then having pulmotil and being very quick with that, putting that into gestation and lactation, we really seem to shorten that tail. And then also using, trying novel drugs or newly available. Meloxicam was a big help in some of these groups that were getting out 6, 8, 10 weeks of age when they start seroconverting and helping shorten that tail. So really trying to do a lot of different things, and something I'm pretty passionate about, and we'll get to this maybe when we talk about the PED, would be, all right, let's try and quantify this. Let's try to record, get a handle on what we think works, what a success looks like. And so doing some of those things, and the mash-offs were great about that, and they really pushed, like, okay, you're going to do this. How are we going to measure success? And, well, number of groups with mortalities over 80% is a really important metric if you're struggling in that area. And moving that to 8 or 10 to 0 was a big win. So those are a few of the things we kind of tried just in terms of on the PRRS. So I might pause there. I got on a little bit of a run there. So I guess any questions or clarification you think I need on the PRRS side?
No, I think that was a very good overview, Brent. Maybe talk a little bit about, more specifically, let's dive a little bit deeper there in terms of, you have all these sow farms that are close by, are you doing any exposure, any inoculation, in terms of your incoming gilts, or if you have a sow farm break, or, do you have any successes or failures with anything like that, Brent?
Yep. The initial part of the closure, trying to, establish that day 0. And that was I would say a really important part that, when I was at Pipestone, they believed in. When I was at the mash-offs, they believe in. Suiday believes that. And there's lots of opinions on, do you do that with vaccine? Do you do that with live virus? How much virus to put in there? I'd probably lean more towards the LVI route, just some of my experiences and stuff. But I think there's good cases out there, especially depending on barn layout. You have a single gestation barn and wow, this is blowing through. You can probably get by with walking positive animals down, bringing piglets from the farrowing house, kind of the natural exposure. Because I've also seen it when you do the LVI, but your prevalence maybe wasn't as high as you thought it was. And wow, you basically fit 4 weeks worth of aborts and mortality and just general stress into a 1 week time frame, which you can argue good or bad, but the managers generally don't appreciate having that many aborts in 1 week. So there comes down to some different philosophies on the exact kind of part of it, the execution there. But I would say in general, my experience is establishing that day 0 and that's for Mycoplasma, PEDv, PRRS, Delta, you name it. That's a really critical piece of disease eradication and control.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Brent, for going a little bit further on that. So let's talk a little bit about PEDv just a bit. A little bit different virus, a little bit different in terms of the management and control of that. Brent, maybe talk about some of your, large scale successes there.
Yeah. The biggest, I guess, success story we had working, this was when I was with Mashoffs. Again, we have a lot of sow farms there that were really close together. So 10 to 13 sow farms, probably within like a 30-mile radius. So any way you slice it, you're close to someone else, and independent producers or other systems in there as well. Wean to market sites. So it's a hog dense area. During this time, prices were pretty strong as well on wean pigs. So we had a lot of motivation to eradicate this virus as quickly as possible. So when this farm broke, we had a single farm break, and then over the course of just another couple days, we had 2 more, and then it was about every week we broke 1 more. It ended up with I believe 6 total sow farms. And you think, boy, how are we moving this around? Well, it's 25 degrees out. I've just told how close everything is together, all the traffic that maybe we control, maybe we don't, and the other farms. So it's a really difficult position to be in. And all right, so we want to get this virus out as fast as we can. We want to save as many pigs as we can. And if we have the opportunity to make this a little bit easier, that's even better. So we opted to try PEDv vaccine. PEDv vaccine had been used within the mash-offs, generally more with farms that were at risk of kind of becoming chronic or persistently infected. That's not really the right term, but anyways, having lingering issues, failing to get it cleaned up. But we looked at it as, well, the worst route is some vaccine. We'll try it. And we had 6 farms, and this goes earlier to, trying to share data that we have. How do you measure success? And so we basically set up 6 farms. We implemented the vaccine at all of those, and we had a lot of success there. We dropped our closure length, by about our average length by about 3 to 4 weeks. The data got a little muddy just based on how those initial mortalities were recorded. So that pre-wean mortality was hard to get a number on, but just looking at manager perspective, anecdotal evidence, felt we had some pretty substantial benefits there as well. So that was a really, what we found to be a really helpful management intervention, utilizing this vaccine. And Amy Mashoff, Melissa Hench, who was there at the time, really encouraged me, pushed me to, this was really good. How do we quantify this? So we did a case control study, so to say. The scientists in the room will probably laugh at my attempt at it, but we took those 6 farms, we compared it to a handful of historical breaks, eliminated ones that had obvious differences, concurrent PRRS problems. Maybe we had management turnover that we felt contributed. So we try to get rid of some of that noise and just compare, and that's how we came up with that number. And I don't have it right in front of me. It was about 3.5 weeks or so that we dropped our average closure length. And when you're in a high density area, whether or not there was production improvements, having that virus out of there sooner was a big win. And they pushed me to that. Zoetis was a great help in running some of those number comparisons and helping So shout out Kevin Eggers, who was there at the time, and Deb Amodi for her help. And presenting that at ASV, again, how do we got lots of great veterinarians doing lots of great things. And occasionally you have very average veterinarians who get lucky and do something great, or at least good. And that was my case, I think. And so let's share this. Let's help others. And hopefully people have tried a little bit of vaccine here and there and had seen some success as well. So I generally look at it as someone being able to eliminate a disease faster is always good for me, whether it's my system or not, because that's less virus at my neighbor's barn, which means less virus for my pigs to get, or bacteria, whatever the case is. And that's just always helpful.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that I've seen even as we go to conferences or even have discussions, within our various forums or whatever, is how collaborative we've become as an industry just for that very reason, right? If we help each other, we both win-win, right? So yeah, that's been exciting. Thanks for sharing that, Brent. So I want to pivot a little bit, right? So a couple things that you've talked about is vaccination. And vaccination has been quite an emotional word since COVID-19, right? So I'm sure you have non-pork production friends that when they hear you're a swine veterinarian, ask you 20 different questions, right? About your day, what you do, everything from, is the pork that I eat is safe, or, what are the welfare standards that you have for your system, et cetera. So specifically, if we can here, without making this a 3-hour long podcast, right? What do you tell your non-pork producer friends when they ask about, hey, how do you use vaccinations within your swine herds? And tell me about that technology and those protocols, Brent. What do you tell them?
Yeah, it's probably good to warn me not to get too in the weeds, because those that know me know that there's no 1,000-foot level. This is we go a mile deep on some of that. So I'll try and be brief. I generally, start with the end in mind. We want healthy, productive pigs. That's better for me. That's better for you as a consumer to have healthy, productive pigs. And vaccines play a role in that. My daughter is, going on 2 years old. So she got lots of shots early. And, I was like, holy cow, are these all necessary? But on the other hand, that's exactly how it translates to pigs, where, the cost of a disease outbreak can be really devastating. You might not have seen parvovirus for 3 years or 5 years or ever on a farm, but if you stop vaccinating, there's a good chance you will. So really trying to share with those, friends, family, strangers on the airplane, whatever, that it's really about how do you make safe and productive pigs, which makes safe and and nutritious meals for them. If they have specific, questions, the mRNA sort of thing, I think it's really important. Like, this doesn't change the DNA. You do not consume that mRNA virus. It's not in the genes. It doesn't change. It's there to basically create an immune response. There's a minimum 21-day withdrawal on all vaccines anyways. Most of them are given long before marketing. And so really try and say these are safe, they're efficacious, they're beneficial for us, and they're beneficial for you. And then, as the questions get deeper, so do my answers. So I might leave it there unless there's anything else I need to highlight.
No, I think that was perfect. And I have very similar conversations, Brent. So yeah, once again, we could probably have a podcast series based off of that one question, right? So one thing that I want to touch on that I think you have great experience to share with our listeners is Slat level execution, right? So you can develop the best vaccination program in the world or the best biosecurity program in the world, but then you have to influence people to go execute it, right? You can't vaccinate all the pigs in your system by yourself. Right, Brent? So how have you found ways to be more influential to increase that daily execution on the Slat level, Brent?
Yeah. I had the opportunity. I worked with a really great wean to market team, and just production team in general, sow farms, directors and stuff at the mash offs. A big thing on the wean to market side specifically was trying to have more consistent execution. And the biggest one was just communication, having clear expectations, making sure everyone was on the same page, reviewing that, following that up, trying not to, I didn't want guys to think they had me watching over their shoulder to make sure they ordered, whether inventory said you had 2450 for pigs on feed at this site, but you ordered 2600 doses of vaccine. Why are we overshooting? Or boy, it was 24, but whatever the case is. But trying to have levels of oversight in there, and mostly that came down to trying to be there with them. Let's get in the barn together. They can run vaccine on their own. They can sort and grade pigs on their own. They can, they're perfectly capable. But having a second person there asking questions tends to, I'm not sure why I did it that way, or, well, that's just the way I was taught when I started 6 years ago. And you identify, okay, hey, we need to wait till we're at the site to start thawing this vaccine, or we need to thaw it in cold water. The Circo vaccine, let's get that set out the night before. Or, if you're worried about it being too warm, why don't we put it in a small cooler with an ice pack, and over the next 12, 16 hours, it'll get to room temperature and not 85 degrees, and things like that. Let's try and work together, be a partner for it. And that was really great in terms of a compliance. How do we execute better? From another example, probably at a little bit larger initiative standpoint, was that we rolled out a new disinfectant protocol. We had the mash offs, had somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 farms and doing somewhere in the neighborhood of about 50 different things, generally the same products, but decided, hey, we think there's better options out there. There's safer products. There's more efficacious. There's ones with better degreasing properties, ways to streamline this process. So as we dug deeper into it, it's like, boy, I think we can replace this. We were basically using a detergent and then a disinfectant, and the order and when they're being washed, applied, rinsed was all sorts of all over the place. So we decided we've got the opportunity to replace these products with a single product. We can condense this process, and we can update all these work instructions kind of in one fell swoop. As it tends to go, you open your mouth and you get rewarded with responsibilities. And so that was me saying, I think there's a better way. And Amy says, great. So happy you volunteered. And so that was a long process, learned a lot, but really learned a lot about disinfectants, learned a lot about rolling out new initiatives. A big thing I learned was, getting initial buy-in, understanding the problems, what can we fix, so that when you sell, this idea, they're willing to buy. So making sure you kind of start with the end in mind. Let's make sure we put a new initiative together that people want. So identified the key areas we wanted to address, started with a small rollout. We tried it in a single farm, 2 farms, there's kind of sister farms, did that for 3-4 months, felt really good about the process, and say, okay, how are we going to roll this out? So we rolled it out to another farm, and just like, okay, this is what you need so that I can show up, say, hey, we're switching. You have all the equipment you need. You have the resources you need, and boom, try it. Turns out didn't go super well. Had to rethink a few things in the startup package, that kind of stuff, but felt really good about it. Rolled it out to the rest of the region. All right. Goes really quite well. Takes a little while for farmers to use up their on-farm inventories, things like that, and then rolling it out to the rest of the system. So at every step, you build your way up, you continue to build buy-in, and you continue to learn and improve that process so that hopefully each successive step is smoother and easier. It was quite the process. It would have been easy to just say, hey, we're switching this product, go. But, we changed the processes, we changed the SOPs, put them on new platforms, changed the products, the whole process there was changed and ultimately came out pretty successful.
Yeah, I think your last comment there, Brent, hits the nail on the head, right? It's easy to leave things just exactly like they are, right? Then it's easy to just say, hey, here's what we're doing. And then that's how you drop it. The harder way is the right way, right? And that's to study the problem, analyze the solution, and then make sure that it gets executed to the best of its extent that it can, right? So, yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Curious to discover if you can manage your animal data and teams work with the touch of a finger? Some of the best and largest pig farm holdings worldwide use cloud farms to collect and analyze data like never before. How? With the most advanced mobile app to collect data accurately and super fast. For breeding, farrowing, weaning, and finishing. Also, this is the easiest way to assign tasks to your team and motivate to work more efficiently. You instantly understand what gets done on time and what doesn't. So yes, you can manage your animal data with the touch of a finger.
So I got kind of four, fun questions here to end on, Brent. So first, what's your favorite pork recipe?
Yeah, I like anything that comes off the smoker. Ribs are always great. I would say if I'm cooking, my most impressive is probably pork belly burnt ends.
Oh,
That's a frequent request from my wife, and they're pretty good.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. If you had magical powers and could eliminate one swine virus from the world, which would you pick?
I would probably have to say African swine fever. Just the risk of it is so big. PRRS is obviously probably my biggest headache from a day to day, but that doesn't shut down markets. So I'm going to lean with African swine fever.
Yeah. What's your favorite part of fall?
Fall's tough because that's a great time of year.
Okay.
Iowa State football's got to be in there. I enjoy going home for harvest and help on the farm when I get the chance. Hunting season, which I did more so in vet school, trying to escape small animal medicine than I did do now. But I would say just I enjoy spending time with my wife and daughter now in the fall weather, the change that we enjoy. Trips to see the leaves change and things like that. So I would say just the general enjoyment of spending time with my family in the fall.
That's awesome. All right, last question here, and then we'll let you go. What's the biggest hurdle that you've overcome in your career that you're the most proud of?
That's a good one. I think I would say the biggest hurdle I've overcome throughout my career has been learning to establish buy-in and rapport with groups. I'm relatively outgoing. Don't mind talking with and meeting new people and stuff, but I'm not the best at building that immediate relationship. I can be sometimes a little more reserved or analyzing of situations. So trying to understand that the mash-offs push disc assessments quite a bit. Suiday does as well. So I've gotten a lot of that, a lot of feedback, not always the easiest to receive, but trying to, I always look at it as like, I want to be the very best veterinarian that I can be. I want to be the best resource for my producers my production managers, my sow farm, day one care, whatever. So if this is what I need to do to get better, then so be it. And that's the biggest hurdle I'm probably continuing to climb. But really, like I said, it's been painful at points, but pretty thankful for the people I've worked with that have been willing to give feedback and push me to improve.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Brent, and thanks for joining us. This is an outstanding episode. I hope listeners got a lot out of this from Brent's, successes and failures throughout his young career. And Brent, we wish you the best as you go forward. So with that, thanks for joining us on this episode of the Swine It podcast. We look forward to having you listen to more here in the future. Thanks, guys.